Story 1. The Ones Who Come For Us. A few days before my father died, he told me he had been talking to his deceased brother. When I went to visit him, I thought, oh no, it's getting to be that time. On the day he passed, he was sitting upright in bed, unconscious, with my mom and me each holding one of his hands. His head was tilted back, resting. Suddenly, he opened his eyes with a look that seemed to say, "What the hell are you all doing here?" as he stared up at the ceiling or the wall. A few minutes later, he passed away. Both my mother and I said the same thing. They came for him. His family had come to get him. That moment was the last gift my father gave me. Don't be afraid of death. If you believe, your loved ones will come for you too. It's not the end, it's only the end of the beginning. I also have another story to share about my grandmother, my mother's mother. She was dying in the hospital. When my father arrived, it was just the four of us in the room, with my grandmother in bed. My mum and I went downstairs to the cafe to get something to eat. When we returned, we found my father sitting alone in the lobby near the elevators. We asked him why he wasn't in the room, and he simply replied, "There's no room for me in there, they're all there." My mom and I rushed back to the room and found my grandmother taking her last breaths. She had a DNR, so we called the front desk for a nurse, but she was already gone. Later, my father explained to us why he had left. He said he had seen my grandfather, two great aunts, and a family friend standing around the bed. My grandfather was holding her feet, waiting for her. My dad had always had the ability to see these things sometimes, but he couldn't bear to look at the dead waiting for someone to pass, so he left the room. They came and got her too. My father was a deeply sensitive and special person. He was pragmatic and rarely spoke about these things because he knew people might think he was crazy. There's so much we don't know and so little that we do. I myself am a medical empath and a registered nurse, and I've seen enough to know they're never really gone. Story 2. Between Two Worlds. I've died twice. The first time was in a serious car accident. I remember the blinding white light. It was pure love and nothing else mattered. Just total peace. The EMTs pronounced me dead, and then I heard someone yell that they were getting a faint pulse and to call for Medivac immediately. I didn't want to leave the light. I was trying to stay in it. But a voice told me it wasn't my time yet, that I was still needed here. The second time I died was during open heart surgery. I was on a heart-lung machine. When I woke up after surgery, I clearly remember a young man, maybe a nurse, who often held my hand and told me to hold on, to stay strong. I told him that the breathing tube hurt and that I wanted it removed. He gently said, "Hang on for one more hour, and then we'll see. You're almost there." I even remember practicing sign language with him. Later I was told that there had been no male nurse and that I absolutely could not have been talking. I still had the breathing tube in and my arms were bound by the sheets. A standard procedure to prevent patients from accidentally pulling the tubes out as they wake up. 2 days after I was moved out of the ICU, I swear I saw an angel. She entered my hospital room and chased away a dark shadow that had been lingering there. After the surgery, when my husband brought me home just before Thanksgiving, he helped me get settled on the sofa before leaving to get groceries. I was lying down, but could still see the patio door, the one we always use since it's closest to the garage. I fell asleep. Later, I woke up to the sound of two men talking in the kitchen. They were talking about me. Strangely, I wasn't afraid. I actually felt comforted, as if they were watching over me. As I became more alert, I heard one of them say, "He's home now, she'll be okay." The other replied, "We can go now, he's here." And at that exact moment, I saw my husband opening the patio door, walking in with the groceries. Guardian angels, ghosts, loved ones who've passed on? I honestly don't know. All I know is that I felt deeply comforted knowing they had been watching over me. My open heart surgery happened in 2011, but now and then, I still experience the unexplainable. And I'm not the only one. A close friend of mine, who also had open heart surgery 6 months before me, had something similar happen. He had endocarditis and was dying rapidly. While waiting in the hallway of the hospital after an echocardiogram, lying on a gurney, A man walked by and did a double take. It was one of his old fraternity brothers, someone he hadn't seen in 10 years. The man told my friend Jerry to call Dr. Pollock and ask him to do the surgery. At that point, Jerry didn't even know he needed surgery, but he agreed. Shortly after, a cardiologist came into his room and confirmed that he needed emergency surgery and that he needed to choose a surgeon. The doctor listed off a few names, and one of them was Dr. Pollock. Jerry picked him. As luck would have it, Dr. Pollock had a last-minute cancellation and was available. They performed the surgery the very next morning. That night before the operation, Jerry's deceased father came into his hospital room. He told Jerry everything would be okay and not to worry. Jerry survived, and he recovered beautifully. Later, Jerry told Dr. Pollock about the recommendation from his fraternity brother. When he gave him the name, Dr. Pollock's face changed. He looked puzzled, then told Jerry that his friend, Brad, had died in a car accident 5 years ago. Story 3. The night my father visited. One Tuesday night last January, I was sitting on the couch when I felt a very strong presence next to me. It was so intense that I looked up, fully expecting to see someone standing there, but there was no one. My father immediately came to mind. It just felt like him. The sensation was unsettling, but I tried to brush it off. I'm sensitive to things like this, and I didn't want to even consider that it could be him, in spirit. About a minute later, my cat, who was sitting on the windowsill next to me, suddenly looked up and fixed her gaze intently on something. I looked too, expecting to find a bug or something that caught her attention, but there was nothing. Now, this is a very friendly, non-skittish cat. Strangers can walk into the house and she won't even flinch. But after about 10 seconds of her tracking something with her eyes, she darted under the couch. She had never done that before. I knelt on the ground to check on her, and out of the corner of my eye I saw someone walk past. I assumed it was my child, so I started talking to them about how weird the cat had been acting. Then I looked up. No one was there. I could hear my child in the other room playing computer games. I found out that Saturday that my father had been found dead in his bed after his friends called in a wellness check. No one had heard from him in days. The coroner said he had likely died a few days earlier. We were somewhat estranged, so we hadn't been in contact recently, but I'm convinced he passed away on that Tuesday, the day I felt him there. That was the day he came by. He was a big, imposing man. That could explain why the cat was so rattled. A few weeks later, I spoke with a medium. He shared very specific details, not just about my dad, but also about a friend of his who had been visiting in spirit because his health was failing. The medium said that the friend likely didn't have much time left. That friend passed away about a month later. While we were on the video call, the medium's phone was knocked down, twice. Not just fell, but knocked out of the holder. He told me, "That's your dad. He doesn't like that we're doing this." Which tracks. My father never believed in psychics. He was an atheist. Apparently, even atheists can stick around after death. I hadn't told the medium anything, not how my dad died or even the nature of his passing. Just that he had passed. Interestingly, the medium said my dad was in bed and woke up with a sharp pain in his chest. He knew it was the end, and he was able to push himself out of his body before he felt any more pain. The coroner confirmed it was a heart attack. The medium had no way of knowing that. I've read near-death accounts where people say something similar, that they can leave their bodies before the worst pain sets in. It's a comforting thought. I don't think the medium was just telling me what I wanted to hear. It wasn't his style. Even knowing that we live on after death doesn't take away the pain of losing someone, but it does bring some peace. It makes me believe that this thing we call consciousness is far bigger than our bodies, and that it truly transcends matter. I don't think the afterlife is just heaven or fire and brimstone. It seems far more nuanced and much more intriguing than that. Story 4. Signs from Beyond. I was briefly a hospice caretaker, and one of my clients, who was nearing the end of her life, would often tell me to watch out for the ladies surrounding her. She couldn't see them, but she spoke of them frequently, as though they were just beyond the veil, waiting. I couldn't see them either, but I felt something in the air, heavy, yet strangely comforting. It felt as if they were there to guide her. And later, I would feel something similar guiding me when my own father entered hospice a few years later. Like her, he also called out to loved ones who had passed, voices only he could hear, whispering from somewhere unseen. There was a peacefulness about him in those final days, as if he had already made peace with whatever awaited him. One night I asked him, "How will I know you're with me after you're gone?" After a long silence, he looked at me with a glint in his eye and a quiet smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You'll be surrounded by Tweety birds," he said. "You'll see them everywhere." Tweety birds. It was a nickname I hadn't heard in years, one he'd given me when I was a child. It was such a strange thing to say, but somehow it made my heart feel lighter. The day after he passed, I found a single yellow feather on my car. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity. What made it so unsettling wasn't just the color, but the fact that yellow birds, Tweety birds, weren't native to where we lived. We simply didn't have them in the area. And yet, there it was, a sign that my dad's presence was still lingering, just out of sight, but not far. Over the weeks that followed, I started finding more feathers. On my front porch, on the doorstep, in the driveway, all of them yellow. They seemed to appear out of nowhere, almost like he was leaving me a breadcrumb trail, guiding me through the one. Grief. The dreams began shortly after. One in particular stands out so vividly it still gives me goosebumps. It felt so real, I could swear I felt the warmth of my father-in-law's embrace. He had passed shortly after my father. I hadn't expected him to reach out so soon, but there he was, sitting at the kitchen table, smiling, talking about things only he would know. His eyes twinkled with mischief, as if to remind me he was still watching over us. When I woke up, I could almost hear his voice, echoing in the room. And then there was the dog, our soul dog, our beloved companion, who had been with us through thick and thin. She passed away in early December, taken too soon by liver failure. She was only 6. We made the agonizing decision to let her go, holding her as she took her last breath. Something shifted in the room when she passed. The energy thickened, and a quiet stillness settled over everything, as though she had just slipped into something beyond. Her absence left a hollow gap I didn't know how to fill. Then, not long after, I came across a post about a litter of puppies, somehow related to her in a strange and almost inexplicable way. We went to see them, planning to choose a chocolate-colored pup, but instead we left with a black one, the one that looked exactly like her. The resemblance was uncanny. We hadn't planned on getting another dog so soon, but it felt like she had sent this one to us. This new puppy, sweet, gentle, and calm, seemed to carry her spirit. Sometimes she looks at me with eyes that seem to say, "I know how much you miss her." Then something even more unexplainable began to happen. From the day our dog passed, our backyard started filling with cardinals, dozens of them. At first, just 1 or 2, but soon they were everywhere. Some days I'd step outside and the air would be alive with fluttering wings, crimson feathers bright against the snow-covered ground. What made it even stranger was that they always gathered in the same spot, where I used to play ball with our dog in the afternoons. One cardinal in particular would sit in that spot every day, watching me, as if keeping vigil. It felt like our dog's spirit was using the birds to communicate, to show me she was still with me in some strange, unearthly way. I don't have answers to any of it, but in those quiet moments, when the wind stirs the trees and the cardinals gather, I feel them. My father, my father-in-law, our beloved dog, just beyond the veil. Maybe they're not gone after all. Perhaps they're closer than we think. Story 5. My mother's final gift. From that moment on, the thought of death terrified me. It became a lingering shadow in my life, something I couldn't stop dreading. But everything changed the night I sat beside my mother in her final moments. Watching what she experienced as she took her last breaths completely shattered my fear. It was as if she had one foot in this world and the other already beyond it. and whatever she saw, it was wonderful. I know now without a doubt that death is not the end. As she approached the threshold, I sat nearby, holding her hand. But she wasn't looking at me anymore. Her gaze had drifted past me, locking onto something in the far corner of the room. Then, her entire expression transformed. Her face, once tired and worn, lit up with pure, uncontainable joy. It wasn't just peace. It was excitement, like someone greeting a loved one they hadn't seen in years. Her eyes followed something invisible, tracking it as it moved across the room toward her. I swear by the way she was looking that whatever it was had come right up beside her. Then, as suddenly as it had started, she closed her eyes. A deep, rattling breath shuddered through her chest, the unmistakable sound of the death rattle. I sat there, barely breathing myself. 2 minutes later, she exhaled one final time, and she was gone. But I don't believe she died in that last breath. I believe she had already left the moment. Her eyes closed, that her mother and sister long past had come for her, and her soul had gone with them. Her body simply needed those last 2 minutes to catch up. I used to fear death more than anything in the world. But when I saw the look on her face, pure, childlike wonder, I knew deep in my heart and soul that there is something waiting for us beyond this life. And I'm certain it is beautiful. These stories remind us that perhaps death is not the end, but just a passage. There's something deeply comforting about the idea that those we love are still around, even if we can't see them. If these stories touched you in any way, leave your comment and share your experience. Have you ever experienced something similar? Do you believe there is something after life? Subscribe to the channel for more real and exciting stories like these, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the next chapter. Until then, be at peace.